Look what finally showed up. This is our engine for the 2013 WRX, and I can already tell. So what was super important about this engine is that it's single ABCS, and you can already tell. See how that's really shallow? It's got a bulge, single ABCS. So I'm gonna get this puppy off here and then tear off all the accessories that it has, and then we'll install all of our USDM accessories, and then she'll be ready to go. Also, whenever I pulled the clutch off, I just got back from a O'Reilly's run, got some oil filters and some brake clean. And when I was draining the oil, unfortunately, I noticed this. So the oil pickup in this, it sits maybe half an inch above the inside of the oil pan. And if you guys didn't know, the oil pickups in these are already really prone to cracking, and that can actually be the cause of a lot of engine failures, is because that oil pickup will crack and then it'll start sucking up air instead of oil, and then you'll lose oil pressure, and then there you go, spin some bearings and cause some serious damage. So I really hate having to do oil pan stuff. It's just a dirty job, but I'll pull this oil pan off. That'll be a good time to inspect the oil pickup. Hopefully the oil pickup is good. If not, I'm probably have a couple extras that I can put on. But so that's the bad news. The good news is the motor still had the oil in it, and the oil looked really good. The last engine that I did, it was a JDM EJ205 non-ABCS, and the engine literally had probably an extra gallon of just water in it, on top of the oil that was still in it. So what we ended up doing with that is, obviously we drained all of that out, but on the first startup, I put some really crappy non-synthetic O'Reilly's oil in it, let it run until it got up to operating temp. I dumped that oil, put a new filter in, and I did that 2 more times just to make sure that we get all the crap out of the motor. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up with doing these JDM swaps, is they just don't take the time and the effort to think things through and do things, because this engine's been sitting on a pallet going across the ocean, so you got to account for those things. And so yeah, and that's what we did with that particular instance. Yeah, so I'll still run this motor, get it up to operating temp, dump that oil, and put some fresh oil in, likewise with the oil filter. But that is good news. So from here, this is still the JDM stuff, so I'm gonna pull all this stuff off and put the USDM stuff on. Well, actually, I'll pull this stuff off, replace the oil pan, replace the pickup, and then I'll start reassembling with the USDM stuff. All right, I just got back from a O'Reilly's run, got some oil filters and some brake clean. And when I was draining the oil, unfortunately, I noticed this. So the oil pickup in this, it sits maybe half an inch above the inside of the oil pan. And if you guys didn't know, the oil pickups in these are already really prone to cracking, and that can actually be the cause of a lot of engine failures, is because that oil pickup will crack and then it'll start sucking up air instead of oil, and then you'll lose oil pressure, and then there you go, spin some bearings and cause some serious damage. So I really hate having to do oil pan stuff. It's just a dirty job, but I'll pull this oil pan off. That'll be a good time to inspect the oil pickup. Hopefully the oil pickup is good. If not, I'm probably have a couple extras that I can put on. But so that's the bad news. The good news is the motor still had the oil in it, and the oil looked really good. The last engine that I did, it was a JDM EJ205 non-ABCS, and the engine literally had probably an extra gallon of just water in it, on top of the oil that was still in it. So what we ended up doing with that is, obviously we drained all of that out, but on the first startup, I put some really crappy non-synthetic O'Reilly's oil in it, let it run until it got up to operating temp. I dumped that oil, put a new filter in, and I did that 2 more times just to make sure that we get all the crap out of the motor. And I think that's where a lot of people like mess up with doing these JDM swaps, is they just don't take the time and the effort to think things through and do things, you know, because I mean, this engine's been sitting on a pallet going across the ocean, so I mean, you got to account for those things. And so yeah, and that's what we did with that particular instance. Yeah, so I'll still run this motor, get it up to operating temp, dump that oil and put some fresh oil in, likewise with the oil filter. But that is good news. So from here, this is still the JDM stuff, so I'm gonna pull all this stuff off and put the USDM stuff on. Well, actually, I'll pull this stuff off, replace the oil pan, replace the pickup, and then I'll start reassembling with the USDM stuff. Okay, so we just removed the oil pan, and it looks like I could have just left it. I don't know how this thing didn't get destroyed, but usually they'll crack right there. But as you can see, this one, it looks to be good. So that kind of sucks, but at least now I know. So I'll go through, clean up all this old gasket maker, pull the pan off the old engine, clean that one up, put it back on, seal it up, and then we'll be ready to rock. All right, so we have everything back together. New oil pan installed. And yeah, so now I'm gonna do the timing, but figured, yeah, we got a mess like usual. But this is the engine that came out of the WRX, and definitely a catastrophic failure, and that's all bearing material. So hopefully it's a rod bearing, but we shall see. But man, it's got freaking bearing everywhere, so it's, whatever happened, it's totally gone. But yeah, now it's time to do the timing belt. Okay, so we just torqued everything. All of these 14 mil bolts will get torqued to 30 foot-pounds. The 12 mil will get torqued to 17. And so whenever you do this, it's advisable to not have your spark plugs installed. That way, after you get finished with the timing, and you rotate it 2 cycles to make sure that you're still within the correct timing, you can actually listen and feel, just to make sure that your valves aren't touching or anything like that. So it's a really good habit to get used to, or to get into. And yeah, so that's all done. So from here, take it off the engine stand. I have a brand new Exidy clutch that'll be going on, and still be using the stock OEM flywheel. And then that's pretty much going to be it. I'll probably get it in the car, however I won't put anything in it until tomorrow. Since I just did the oil pan, I really like to let that cure for at least 24 hours until I add any fluids. Just, I mean, it'd probably be okay to set for like an hour or 2 and then put some fluids in it, but just to be sure, because I hate doing oil pans. So anything I can do to not have to do that again, to ensure that it's good, then that's what I'll be doing. But so we also installed brand new NGK spark plugs, NGK iridiums. They last like 50,000 miles, so I mean they're the ideal spark plug. Oh yeah, we've got to put the exhaust manifold and the turbo on, but aside from that, I mean, this thing's pretty much ready to go in. All right, so earlier I thought I was going to be able to use that Exidy clutch. It's for a BRZ. I bought it a long time ago for a K-swap project. Never used it. The project was never finished, and I don't know why I thought it would work. For some reason I thought they were compatible, but obviously they're not. So luckily, like 6 months ago or something, I bought a really low mile clutch off of eBay for a 13 WRX, and like I never used it for some reason. I'm not really sure, but either way, I have it, and I mean, it looks fantastic. So I just got the flywheel cleaned up. I'm about to install the clutch, and I did want to note that with this year, there's a lot of hoses going on. 02 to 07 doesn't have nearly this much crap going on. So just be mindful of these hoses and where they go. I had actually, so when I was putting this flywheel on, I saw one hose back here on this little nipple that wasn't connected, and it goes from the PCV all the way down to that little nipple back there. So just be mindful of where everything goes. Whenever you tear things apart, try not to do so in like a forceful manner that would otherwise deter where the original like layout would be. That way, whenever you put it back together, everything's going to be pretty much where it would or it should be. That way it's pretty easy to put it back together. So I'm going to put this clutch on, and then the motor will be ready to go in. It is time. She's going in. Okay, so obviously everything's already out, so everything's you know, ready to go, except whenever you do this, unless you want to leave the engine mounts off, put the motor in, and then, you know, finagle your hands in between the engine and the subframe, and potentially lose a hand if the engine falls by, well, yeah, so by whenever you're putting the engine mounts back on, this is how I do it. So if you jack up the transmission, it'll basically allow you to stab the lower studs on the engine, and it'll be high. That way the engine mounts will clear the subframe. So once you can stab the studs, you can pull the jack out, and then you can work on sliding the engine and getting it completely fully seated on the trans. And once you do that, then you can lower everything down. The studs on the bottom of the transmission or the engine mounts will go in their holes, and then Yahtzee. So that's what we're gonna do right now, and hopefully it's not a total pain in the butt. Sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're not, so it just depends on how it's feeling. So I'm gonna bring the tool cart over here, that way everything's readily accessible. Anyways, wish me luck. All right, so everything is in. I just put in fluid, oil, and so this is gonna be the procedure. Obviously hook up your battery. So me personally, I don't put any of the coolant stuff in until I know that the motor's good. Obviously we've never ran this motor, so we have no idea if it's even a good motor. So to me, I mean, it's just gonna be a quick 5-second startup just to make sure there's no weird noises or whatever, and then we'll proceed with adding the coolant and all that good stuff. But, so we wanna unplug the crank sensor, hook up the battery and good stuff, all that good stuff, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna prime the motor to make sure that it has oil pressure on first startup. And you'll see the oil light is on, but I mean, I know it's just the default Subaru light, but it does give you at least some kind of an indication that you have oil pressure. And see how it went off there? So we have good oil pressure. So we'll go back. Okay, it's first start time. The GoPro died and I forgot to charge it last night. So now it's first start time. Fingers crossed. Very good, very good. She's all together. Now we'll just wait. I mean, it runs really smooth. You can always tell with the Subaru if you have compression issues or anything, because the engine will rock really bad. But it's super steady. So, I mean, she's firing really smooth. So, just let the coolant bleed. I just put water in it first. That way, if I have any coolant leaks or anything that needs to be addressed, I'm not freaking spewing coolant everywhere. So I'll burp it with water, make sure there's no leaks, and hope and pray that the head gaskets are good. And then after that, I'll dump all that water, and put regular 50/50 coolant in it. But yeah, so far so good. No smoking. And obviously I drove it out. I reversed it out, and clutch engagement was good and all that good stuff. No chattering. It had a good proper midway engagement, so clutch is good, and yeah, so far so good. So I'll let this burp. Also, I'm sure you guys know, but first time you have water in, you definitely want to get some kind of burping system. This is a must. And then you also want to have your fans on high and then your heater all the way on. That way the coolant can circulate, or the water can circulate through the heater core and get all the air that's in the heater core out. And then yeah, you'll be good to go from there. Okay, so drain the oil after we did the burping process. I mean, I didn't find any leaks. So after I got up the temperature, start everything down, and now just dropping the oil, making sure that we got good clean oil, no contaminants whatsoever, and checking under here for leaks, and everything is all good. So we'll put a new oil filter in, some new oil, and then go take it for a spin. So I just did the first drive, and everything feels good. When I pulled it in, it was smoking, but I checked, and I mean, I don't see any leaks or anything, so it probably just residual. But yeah, everything feels really good. So from here, the car actually came with an access port. Usually I usually sell the access ports on the side and get a custom Pro Tune, but what I'm gonna do now is use this access port to monitor certain parameters on the ECU. So we'll see how much boost it makes, we'll see how much fuel correction is having to be made, obviously keep an eye on coolant temperatures. So this is a 32-bit ECU, so the dynamic advanced multiplier should always be at 1, given that the tune is correct. Obviously we want to see if the motor is knocking, and that's really all that that I'm going to care about for this. So I'm going to go do another drive, monitor these parameters, and see how it's working. So a quick breakdown, I guess, for those that don't know the reason why I want to monitor these certain parameters. So the AF correction, it basically, the ECU has a window of 25% to add or 25% to subtract for fueling, given whatever the target AFR is. So this will tell me if the fueling is on point. If it's over 25% at either adding or subtracting, then we'll know that the tune that's on the car is not ideal. The multiplier is this is your ignition timing table. So at 1.0, this is the max multiplier that you can be for the ignition timing. And then the knock, this actually will read detonation with the knock sensor. So this will tell me if the timing is too advanced at the point to where we're getting detonation. So I'm gonna monitor these guys, and then obviously boost it'll tell me. This should be like 16 psi, but this will tell me if all the vacuum lines and everything are plugged in correctly and that we're not over boosting or under boosting. So yeah, as you can see, it's hitting 15 pounds, no knock. So I mean, for an off-the-shelf tune, this is actually pretty good. I mean, the car feels solid. It goes into boost nice and smooth. I mean, it's not over boosting, it's sustaining 15 pounds, and it's not knocking. So that's fantastic. The car feels great.